Hello, it's Emily, and today I'll be discussing a topic that's been on my mind for quite a while. Let's get into it. Picture this. It's late at night, you're listening to some sad indie songs in your headphones, and suddenly you're in your feelings. Or maybe you're on a long drive and you're looking out the window and you're kind of getting into your main character moment. Maybe you just had an existential crisis at 2 a.m. over a random childhood memory. Or you just overthought a tiny interaction that happened years ago. Happens to the best of us. But let me tell you, part of you likes it. Part of you likes that sadness, sorrow maybe even. The romanticization of sadness has become very popular, and it's become a cultural phenomenon. From sad music to books to movies, sadness is often portrayed as poetic, desirable even. Why do we do this though? Why do we take something uncomfortable or even painful like sadness or loneliness and turn it into something aesthetic or even cool at times? I'll be unprofessionally breaking down this topic. So, a reminder to not take my word for it and take it with a grain of salt, because I probably don't even know what I'm talking about, because I'm not a professional. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a scientist. So, with that being said, we can get into it. Also, beverage of choice today. An Americano. It's probably not. I do like double shot of espresso until like here, then some water, and then ice. The ice is melted because the coffee has been sitting on my desk for about half an hour. Let's take a sip, shall we? Now that's what I'm talking about. Let's talk psychology, shall we? Research says that there's actually a term for why we sometimes enjoy sadness, and it's called tragic pleasure or sublime sorrow. And it revolves about why human beings enjoy tragic situations, and why do we, more often than it's deemed healthy, get satisfaction out of these situations. It's that weirdly satisfying feeling of listening to sad music when you're already sad, or watching a movie just to cry. This leans into something called the paradox of tragedy, which is the idea that we find beauty in pain, even when it's something we'd avoid in real life. Psychologists have a few reasons for this. Let's break them down. First one, emotional validation. Often we don't just want to be happy, we want to feel understood, like we belong, something like that, okay? So, sadness in movies, music, art, it can act as a mirror of our own internal struggles, and in a weird way, it makes us feel seen and comforts us. Don't ask me why, okay? It is not a bad thing. It's good to an extent, but making it aesthetic is essentially bad, like really bad. Secondly, Aristotle. We're bringing in some ancient philosophers. So what? He believed that tragic stories help us purge our emotions, like emotional detox, that sometimes you just need a good cry to move on, which is true. Another is nostalgia. I mean, that could be a topic of its own, okay? But let's not get into that today. Let's leave that for another day, okay? I'm sure you've ever felt sad over something, then realized you kind of like the feeling of being sad. And that is apparently because sadness is tied to nostalgia. And nostalgia is romanticized by our brains and finds comfort as part of the formation of memory. That's what it said on the internet. So yeah. So sometimes it may not be even your fault that you're sad. Maybe you've started the feeling of sadness, when you are sad, and then every single thing that you're feeling that happened in the past, it gets accumulated, it stacks, and then you're not just crying over something that you've cried over in the first place, you're crying over everything. So sometimes it's not your fault. Sometimes when you think of like some past experiences, everyone knows how nostalgia feels, and it's not your fault always. Sometimes it's your memory and your mind playing with you. So don't let it get you, I guess. But now, let's get into the real deal, okay? Probably the main reason for our glamorized sadness. The media. So, let's think about some big popular movies, okay? And don't get me wrong, I love all of these movies. They're great. You should watch them if you haven't already. For example, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, The Virgin Suicides, The Perks of Being a Wallflower even, Girl Interrupted. All of these films, okay? They don't just tell sad stories, they make sadness look beautiful with its beautiful soundtrack and colorful montages, dreamlike scenes. It's all beautiful. Yeah. While it may not be the plot of the film, it makes sadness look profound, and it kind of revolves around it. And it is probably sometimes the reason why people watch them, because they feel sad and they want to feel understood, or sometimes people just watch it to feel something, perchance. Don't take my word for it. And then there's music. We all love music. We all love sad music, melancholic. Yeah, we all love that. But why do we love sad artists? Guilty. Billie Eilish, Lana Del Rey, The Smiths, Phoebe Bridgers. Who else? There's many. I'd say the Cranberries, but I don't think they're really that sad. Sometimes, yeah. Some songs are sad, but sometimes not. These are often melancholic, okay? And I don't think that it's just about the music, and I think that it's about the mood that it creates, you know? I mean, let's be real. These people are hella cool, and I think that by listening to their music and kind of wanting to relate to it, we kind of want to be like them or somehow like that, okay? Or feel like them. I don't know. And then probably one of the biggest parts of this, the social media, okay? Social media plays a big part of this. Whether it's the starting thing of it, and I was not a part of this, okay? I was still small, but kind of like Tumblr, sad girl culture turned emotional distress into an identity, I think. We're talking moody Polaroids, cigarettes, but in a Lana Del Rey way. Yeah, we're talking now, right? Let's not forget about Call Me By Your Name and its beautiful soundtrack and cinematic montages of that movie with the soundtrack. I needed to take a deep breath just thinking of it, because that movie is phenomenal. Let's move on. We're constantly creating sadness to make it feel cinematic and make it beautiful. But let's not blame it all on social media, okay? Like many people would. Because social media is an everyday part of our lives. Definitely. But let's not blame it on that, and on music, and on cinema. Okay? They're great. But this phenomenon of idealized sadness is old. And I'm talking ancient old, okay? From art or philosophy, is deeply rooted back in the day, okay? We're talking Byron, Keats, Shelley, and other romantic poets who literally wrote their pieces to sadness. They believed that suffering was tied to creativity and the deeper understanding of life in its whole. Which is, yeah, it's been mentioned. This is a known phenomenon. But I think that is different for each and every single person, okay? Someone might feel more creative after something tragic happens to them or some trauma, okay? Some people's creativity might get killed and destroyed by trauma and sadness. So I think that it depends on a person, okay? But that's just what I think. Now, let's take a sip of my coffee again. Then we also have the existentialists. Sartre, Nietzsche, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. They argued that life's meaning is shaped by suffering. Nietzsche said, and I quote, "To live is to suffer. To survive is to find some meaning in the suffering." So here you have it. Also, this is what I found. Maybe he did not say that or write that. Do your own research if you want to know more, okay? Do not believe me in everything. Now we may think that when we find sadness beautiful, we're actually participating in an age-old tradition. That's not entirely true, and it doesn't mean to get lost in it, okay? Now, let's get more critical, okay? Yeah, let's talk about the very dark parts of the glorification of sadness. While I cannot say that there isn't beauty in expressing feelings and emotions, which there is beauty, because not everyone can do that. Not everyone is able to express their emotions. It gets to a point though. There's that place when it becomes toxic. The rise of sad girl culture sometimes blurs the line between expressing emotions and glorifying them, such as sadness, right? Or anxiety, or eating disorders. But let's not get into that, okay? Let's not. That's not my place. Now, listen up though. In my own personal opinion, depression is not a fashion statement, and sadness isn't a personality trait, okay? I said it, yeah, I know. It's not supposed to be harsh, it's just my opinion. But I think that it's true in some cases, to some extent. Again, I'm saying just my outlook and views on this. Don't take it too seriously. Thank you. And do not trap yourself in the narrative, okay? When you start seeing sadness as poetic, you might unconsciously seek it out. And that's not your fault, right? But constantly idealizing sadness makes it harder to actually move forward and move on, recover when it's connected to some mental struggles. Then there's also another big part of it. Media, social media, reinforcement. TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. Actually, it's X now. I still say Twitter. These can create an echo chamber, if I may say, where sadness feels aspirational rather than something not essentially bad, but in a way harmful. Because there is a difference between embracing your emotions and feelings and romanticizing pain to the point where it feels necessary. Because pain isn't necessary. You can move on. It might take time, but you can move on. Yeah. So where do we draw the line? How do we acknowledge sadness in this digital time? Because there is sadness everywhere, there's anxiety everywhere, without turning it into something we actively seek out. I'm not a therapist, so I'm just saying these, I think, opinions and maybe some little advice that helped me. Let's be aware of our consumption of sadness. Enjoy the sad movie, enjoy the sad songs, enjoy the sad poetry, but be mindful of how much you're spending in that headspace. It can get pretty overwhelming. Nevertheless, sadness is a part of our everyday life, and it's a natural part of human experience, so we kind of have to find beauty in it. You gotta do what you gotta do. What? Okay, but stay grounded and ensure that you're not romanticizing it to the point where it's detrimental to our well-being. And when I say our, I mean we. Me and you. Okay, so yeah, that's all I got for today. Thank you for hanging out with me, and you can check out my Instagram and maybe come back for another video. See ya.